Hi everybody, it's Grace Bell. Here I am in my kitchen again, sending you an eating peace video. So, making this for you this week as I build up towards starting an online program, but I'll be, even though involved with people that are enrolling right now, I'm still going to be sending out these weekly videos with tips and short ideas for how to begin to understand, manage, and bring to peace your relationship with food, eating, and your body. And in preparing for the Eating Peace online program that's coming, I sat down and I was looking at all the different materials and parts of the curriculum that I always include, and feelings and mind and body and spirit, and how that all interweaves together to create really looking at peace and drawing on the peaceful part of us to enhance that and build that and make that the strongest in a way. And also just the letting go, relaxing and letting go that can happen around this relationship with food and eating when you begin to question your stories. So if you've been looking at videos and following things that I write, you'll know that I love questioning stories. I also love a good story with a lot of drama and excitement and the peak of the adventure, and then everything turns out okay in the end. Or not. All right. But this story about food and eating, incredibly painful. I don't mean to make light of it, although I kind of do. But when I look back and remember how I was, it was so dreadful, it felt like a matter of life or death. So my binging was extreme. At the beginning of my early eating disorder, the way I was with food and eating was either a majority of the time I was not eating enough, I was extremely controlled, watching that appetite, making sure it didn't go outside of the boundaries of what was right, and then being overwhelmed with the brutal way that I needed to hold myself together and stay in control, and I would flip right outside in the opposite of control and feel like I was completely out of control, on a binge, letting all things, throw everything to the wind. Who cares what's going on? I'm going to eat whatever I want, and then we'll get back to balance later. Well, not everybody has that kind of extreme behavior when it comes to food and eating, but lots of places in between are also extremely painful. Many people at night, after they've done their duties for the day and been at work, for example, feel this empty space of an evening or unscheduled time, and they find themselves getting up over and over again to go to the refrigerator and get a little something to eat, and kind of slowly getting more and more and more full. So they might not call it an outright binge, but you're definitely eating out of some sort of anxious emptiness or painful anxiety or something that's happening that doesn't feel comfortable with just being in the moment with what is outside of food. So what I wanted to mention today was how much I notice that the way you are with food and eating is often the same way you feel about life, your thoughts about life. So in other words, it can be tricky because it's hard to understand what that means, but when I look back, I can see so well exactly what that means. So in my long distance past, I would say that my feeling about life and the universe, maybe God, if you want to say the word God, that's not required, source or something, whatever's mysterious, whatever's going on here that seems to create a life force that is beyond comprehension in a way. My relationship to that was a frightened one. Very, very interested, very curious, but also quite tentative, very scared and nervous. I thought that the way reality was suddenly horrible things could happen. Dangerous things, dreadful things. And it was like a battle out there. People could say mean things to you and it would hurt. It would go in and feel like, ouch, very difficult. felt like there was a center inside the middle of myself, around my stomach area, like in my torso, that was the center of me, and it felt like that needed to be protected, and it could easily be damaged, and that it had been damaged. And so my relationship to that sensation inside of me matched how I felt about food and eating. I was either extremely protective, extremely, like I built a fortress around it, or I would be acting out the complete collapse of the whole thing. And there'd be out of control binging and eating and kind of frantic search for food, and then trying to come back into, paying back, getting back to the control part. Now, if you're more in between, you might just ask yourself, because I spent time like this too, you name it, I've done it with food and eating. But if you find yourself wanting to go for a little bit more, just a little bit more, or if you notice that you eat really fast and it's sort of uncomfortable for you and you just gulp bites, maybe your sensation of your relationship to the world and this universe is that you need to grab for it quick. It might go away soon. You might not have enough time. Maybe you're not relaxing quite enough. You feel worried about some of what's happening in your life or what has happened, what opportunities you might have. Maybe if you go for a little bit in the refrigerator all night long and wind up filling yourself up to over full, you might notice that you feel a sense of lack or emptiness, and it just seems to not be able to get satisfied. Because wouldn't you notice that when you eat and eat a little bit more, it can be very effective in this sort of temporary moment, but it doesn't really work in the long run. You still have great despair. You still feel empty. It's like the emptiness that is felt behind the food and eating. So just watch how you are with food, and that will be able to tell you what your stories are about the world and about life and being a person in it. It's sort of cosmic, and but I think it's simpler than that all sounds. So I really like the word distorted thinking, those two words, distorted. It makes me think of those funhouse mirrors where you have a regular normal mirror and you're looking at a reflection. And even that can be questioned. Is this a real reflection? What do I see? Is that really me? You can do all that kinds of inquiry with a regular mirror. But then funhouse mirrors, you get these wacky mirrors where half of your body is stretched out over the other side of the room and you're all distorted into strange long or short or squat, crazy kind of shapes and sizes. And really, that's exactly what our mind and what our stories are doing around what we've experienced, even in our day-to-day. So you just see when something really hurts and feels like it comes in, or you feel nervous or frightened about something that's gone on in your life in the past, you know what I always say, number one thing, begin to write it down. Begin by capturing it in your journal. Write out what you think is really difficult. What is your view of the universe? What's your sense of what's going on around here? Where do you fit in it? Is this a dangerous place to be on planet Earth? How do you feel about death? I know these are huge questions, but they really relate very closely, more closely than maybe you ever dreamed, with food and eating. It sure did for me. I found that as I began to look and see what my relationship with that wise, mysterious, connected part of myself that's part of this whole thing that's happening here on planet Earth, the more I got connected to that voice and that part of me, which all of us have, because you have life force just inside of you, living itself, the more you get connected to that, the more the distorted voices die down and are not really necessary. They don't want to make such a fuss. They really don't. They feel kind of safe. So I suppose it's an example of duality in this world. But there's like a healthy part of you, very wise, very kind and unconditional and centered. And then there's this more frightened, perhaps, part of you, or concerned, or like a centered, that part that I was describing earlier that feels like it needs protection, or is just like, woohoo, we're going to do whatever we want around here. Eat absolutely whatever we want. And I always would find, of course, it's not really what I wanted. I was very unhappy eating that way. So this is just letting, the way you're looking at the world and all those thoughts that are running, relax, and tapping into that voice that's more connected to life, more willing to have things, let things be the way they are. And you have all of that inside of you. And the greatest way to begin identifying what's difficult for you is to just see what you object to about being alive. What do you not like about your own life? Who's been a problem for you in your life? What do you think you learned that wasn't so helpful? Just start to write out your complaints. I know we're taught not to complain, but once you begin to look at that, you might be able to see some ways to respond that are from a very wise self rather than a need for food. And I tell you, the more you just become aware, the more you question your stories, the less interesting food is. You don't even have to control it at all. I do not ever spend my days deciding what not to eat or anything about that at all. It just unflows naturally. It just flows, unflows. It flows and unflows. And I just, when I'm hungry, go get something to eat and then move on to the next thing. And you can have that kind of relationship with food too, because it's the way life actually is. Something happens, you respond, and then you move on to the next thing. Some things you think about and you question, you need to look at them more, because here they rise up in your consciousness to be looked at, and then you can move on to the next thing. You see if you need to talk to somebody or resolve something or take care of a thing. What do you need to do to bring peace into your present experience? Maybe nothing at all. Maybe peace is already here. You're just not quite seeing it. So that's my message today, is to begin to look more at your distorted thinking, and specifically about this very grand question of your thinking about life and the universe and what it means and where you fit in to all of it. If you see what that is, then you might have some clues on where to look more deeply. Okay, that's all for now. I'll be back with you next week. And remember, if you have any questions for me, anything you want to ask about Eating Peace and the online program, I talk a lot about how our thoughts and beliefs and feelings all fit in to create the perfect storm of a difficult eating relationship, and then how to dissolve that and become freer and freer over time on your own timeline, letting it unfold with all the different elements that are related here with food and eating, and how to undo all those stories so that you can be free, because everyone has a right to be free. It's what you really are. It's your true nature. Okay, so if you have any questions, just write grace@workwithgrace.com anytime, and join us if you like. Okay, take good care. Bye everyone. Until next week.